Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. I'm so excited today to be talking to my favorite composer and conductor, Joseph Curiale, who is in the Philippines today. He is an American composer who has composed 2 albums that you would love, that you should pick up. One of them is called Awakening, and the other one is called The Music of Life. He came to Los Angeles after living in Japan for a time and has had a very successful career composing music. He has written quite a bit for television, movies, and the recording industry in the early 80s. He also wrote music for The Tonight Show and Steve Martin's film Roxanne. He has performed and written and composed music in Abbey Road Studio in London, England. He is a humanitarian, and he has founded the Joseph Curiale Foundation and has been working to provide girls' orphanages in India to deal with suicides and support when farmers are experiencing a decline in their farms and fields and have left widows holding the bag. And he is an author who has written the book, The Spirit of Creativity. He understands the spirit of creativity. As a composer and a conductor, he has lived it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Joseph Curiale to It's Rainmaking Time. Good afternoon.
Hi, Kim. Hello from the jungles of the Philippines.
Well, what brings you to the jungles of the Philippines, first of all?
Well, it was not something I'd planned on because last year I left India around the end of February in 2011, pretty much wrapping up humanitarian work that I had done for 6 years, except for to continue to raise 2 sisters, orphan girls that I more or less adopted. I was not allowed to adopt them legally, but that's just a technicality. But I ended up on the way out of India and elsewhere. I ended up being right smack in the Japan earthquake, and was stuck there for 9 days, figuring out how am I going to get out of there.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that.
Friends. Oh yeah, it was pretty intense. I thought that was the end. I mean, being from California, I'm not afraid of earthquakes. I sure have a lot of experiences, but this one I thought this is the end. And then after that, then there was the radiation issue, which you just kind of throw your hands up and just going, there's nothing I can do. And then a friend of mine from Singapore, because I had lived in Singapore and produced records in Singapore as well in the past, he contacted me and he says, can you get to the airport and get on a plane? He goes, just get to Singapore. We'll figure out, how to put you up and everything like that. So I did manage to get to the airport after 9 days and went to Singapore. In Singapore, I met a lot of very interesting people, and I met someone from the Philippines who comes from a very poor background and was working extremely hard as a servant to build a house for her family. She's one of 9 children, and so I just got that same intuitive lead that I got when I first went to India, just to help her out. So I came to the Philippines near Christmas time and built her and her family a house, and setting her up in a little business so that she can take care of herself and her family, and also to make her the representative, the Philippine representative of the Joseph Curiale Foundation, because since I've been in the jungle, you see a lot of little kids walking by and they have nothing, and they're on their way to school and they have hardly any clothes and they don't even have a pencil. So recently I asked her, can you please help me to investigate this? And so she did. And even yesterday, she delivered book bags, books, all school supplies, school uniforms, everything to children who fit the bill for the foundation, which is helping, women, what I can say, like sole providers, and orphan children, that kind of thing. So I thought, I'm kind of finished with the humanitarian work because I sacrificed everything, gave up my retirement account. I think at one point in the last 6 years, I qualified for being poor as according to my taxes, what my accountant said. But no, it is bizarre. I mean, I was in Hollywood and, produced my own records, which cost $250,000. And here I am, only able to eat once a day, many times the past 6 or 7 years. But it was gratifying to help people. But I feel the need that again, following the intuitive lead, it's time to get back to helping people in a larger way through music, through writing, books, etc. But it's been a really interesting 7 years. Oh my God. I've lived many lifetimes since I last spoke with you.
You've been all over the place. I really love your music. I am so touched by your music. And when I met you many, many years ago, before I was ever in broadcasting and wanted to interview you, I felt you were on the pulse of something extraordinary in your music, in your composition, in the expansiveness of it. Also, the way your music touches the heart and the international appeal of it. What is a composer? What does a composer do? And what does a conductor do?
Well, a composer creates music. The truth is, I kind of feel the music's already created. It's just I basically kind of fish it in, and it's kind of out there in the ether somehow. And when I'm in a certain kind of a zone, for me personally, kind of a spiritual zone, a channel opens up and allows me to be open to the music that's already there. And then it's my choice whether, I can be lazy and not deal with it, or I can just go, wow, I got to go with this right now. I got to write it down. That's my experience with it. I mean, I have another more cerebral experience, like in Hollywood, where they say, write something by 5 o'clock and it needs to be on this TV show. I mean, I still think there's an aspect of inspiration involved, but with the CDs of my own, that was a completely different experience. That was unsolicited by me in a way. It was just aligning my life in a certain way that opened up or seemed to open up a channel for this music to come through. Conductor, well, not all composers are conductors, and I would imagine a lot of orchestra members would say that most composers are probably rotten conductors, and they need to get somebody else. Well, I certainly don't think I'm a rotten conductor. I think I'm very expressive, and being Italian doesn't hurt. People joke that we talk behind our, with our hands and everything. So there are amazing conductors, and I've come across one conductor of the Redland Symphony in California. He's also, I think, the chairman of the music department at a university in Florida. And he conducted Joy, for example, and he was talking to the orchestra, and I never really talked to him about the details. And what he was saying was like, he completely read my mind. So there are conductors who can conduct it well. However, I always feel when I have, been part of the creation of a new work, nobody is going to be able to get closest to the original intention than I am as a conductor, because I'm standing in front of the orchestra. I'm looking in their eyes. I make a lot of eye contact with the orchestra, and it's my hands, the little nuance of the way I move my hands that I probably will never move it again that way at that moment, is what's part of the magic of the music, because the music is only a bunch of dots, like a bunch of dots on a paper, dots of potentiality and intention, but they need life breathed into them. Now, even with the best orchestras, like I've had the good fortune of working with the London Symphony, recording with London Symphony, Royal Philharmonic, Academy of St. Martin in the Fields, among others. And they're unbelievable musicians, but the music can be interpreted in so many different ways. And sometimes, I hate to say it, that some musicians don't even give a damn. For them, it's just a job. For me, I've had to work hard, save a lot of money and take care of every little nuance of the music to make sure that everything is as kind of divinely perfect as possible, because then I have to let go to some degree, and I have to now put it in the hands of the musicians to breathe a life into it. But I'm still the captain of the ship there, with the steering wheel, but I can't do it by myself. So at that point, it really is a group effort. And even the recording studio, I think at this point, the feedback I've gotten from a lot of disc jockeys, classical radio disc jockeys who have been real heroes and champions for the music, is that there's sound associated as well with the music that I've recorded. And that's absolutely true, because that's the sound of the room, the sound of the reverberation, all of that to me is part of the grander orchestration of the music. It's part of the color. So there's a certain sound as well. So I like to keep that sound consistent when possible. So there's like Abbey Road Studio 1 is where I recorded most of the works. There's a certain sound in there. And the other one I love is Air Lyndhurst, which is George Martin's studio. And I recorded Blue Windows there. And it also is this really divine sonic spaces that seem to fit best so far with the music that I've written.
How have you found out about those sonic spaces and whether they would be right for you? Did you just know? Did someone tell you? Did you have to go there first and feel it out?
Oh my God, over the years I've had like thousands and thousands and thousands of records, and I was very in tune to sound. And like, even if you listen back to records, particularly recordings from the 60s and 70s, like for example the theme song to Route 66, for example, that television show, it had a certain kind of reverberation sound, a colored kind of, I'll say echo, but it's not just echo, but it's just the way the room sounded, that it transports me to a certain time and place, and that's Hollywood at that particular time. So not only Hollywood, and it's also creates a mood for the TV show as well. So each studio has its own sound. Of course, a lot of those studios are going away because everything's becoming digital, where you can kind of record in your bedroom with a MacBook Pro and a few microphones. You can make some nice, and they have digital reverbs, which are kind of replications of what the real thing is. And I think it makes a difference. Those old studios had what were called echo chambers. They're actually other rooms or something, a room dug underneath the studio where they put a microphone, and each one was different. The microphones are different, the way it was built. So each studio had a characteristic sound. So that to me really thrilled me. Like, I can tell sometimes which recordings were done in New York in the 60s and which recordings were done in LA, which recordings were done in England, just by the sound of the recording. And I love that. I mean, again, that's that part of the orchestration that I can't add with a pencil. And but I know that I have access to it. But in the situation with my two recordings, first one, Awakening, was that I heard an album by Gino Vanelli in the 70s called A Pauper in Paradise. And
I love that. Oh my God, I love that album.
And so the second half of, remember, side A was more of a straight rock studio record, and side B was with the Royal Philharmonic. First of all, I was a huge Gino Vanelli fan, and I loved Don Sebesky, who did the orchestration for them, and it was just absolutely unbelievable. My good fortune, now being a huge Gino fan, was a wonderful experience in Hollywood in 1995 when he actually called me and said he heard about my work and would I be interested in producing one of his records with him. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my God, which one?
Turns out that they take so long to do it that I really couldn't afford to stick around. But I did. I worked on the title track to one of his albums called "Inconsolable Man."
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
But the most important part was the friendship. From meeting Gino and Joe, I personally gravitated toward his brother Joe, which actually he's the unsung hero of those records, because now that I know. I've worked with him so often since 1985, and he actually came with me to my first recording sessions in London because I knew him well enough that time. And I said, I really want to do this recording session with, and they had done the Royal Philharmonic. And I said, well, you know the Royal Philharmonic. Let me hire them. Let's go to Abbey Road 1 where you did yours. Would you come with me and sit in the booth and, help me? And he said, sure. And so Awakening was done. He came for the Awakening session as well. And so it was just like association, besides the sound, association that he had worked in the room. And he was a musician, like what in Europe, when I mentioned to anybody that I worked with Gino and Joe Vanelli, they want to sit near me because they kind of feel, well, those guys are like the musician's musician. And they are. They never compromise on anything about the sound, about the actual perfection of their records. And it had a huge influence on me in my earlier days and is more so than ever. So I was very fortunate to have Joe come with me. And he not only, helped me during the recording and was a great moral support for me. And it was, when we got back, he edited Gates of Gold, and he edited all of them for me. And
wow.
We mixed them together at his studio, Blue Moon, where a lot of Gino's records were done. That was the studio they used to own together. Joe is the owner of it now. It was in the same town that I lived at the time, Agoura Hills, California. And so to have a real buddy who one of the people I respect most in the world, not only as a musician, but as a human being, he is an absolute gentleman. And when you're talking about the music industry and pop, he's going to hard come by somebody you can call a gentleman. And Joe is a gentleman, and he's an artist of the highest order. And I kind of feel it's my good fortune, and so we had many late nights, editing and mixing these things, and we're both frazzled, and we're both really in the trenches together, and you learn a lot about a person. We take a break, we're talking, we're both Italian, so we're both, making fun and laughing at all the goofy things that Italian people do that we grew up with, although I grew up in Canada and I grew up in the New York area and in Connecticut. So that's kind of the experience about choosing the studio for me, and it was perfect.
Is a conductor also a kind of arranger?
The composer, I mean, I don't want to get into definitions, but I do have real strong feelings about this, that if I want to say a quote unquote real composer, as we think of composers like Beethoven, and Mozart and Ravel and all these other incredible composers, they do it all themselves. I mean, their music is arranged themselves, it's orchestrated themselves. And of course, the melodies and everything are composed by them. It's,
okay.
Where it's a different story. It's not to say that some of the great composers there are not capable of arranging and orchestrating the music themselves, but they usually get very busy, so they hire other people to, they'll sketch it. Even John Williams does that. I mean, Star Wars, he didn't orchestrate it as far as I know. I mean, or any of those. I mean, he sketched it. But you get the word from all the people who are on the inside, like myself, and you learn that, well, his sketches were very, very, very detailed. So it's kind of fleshing it out. Earl Hagen, who wrote Andy Griffith theme, and Mary Tyler Moore and all that, who Dick Van Dyke, my good fortune again became a really special friend of mine the last 4 years of his life, and I spent a lot of time with him. And he's a genius, and a lot of people don't know that prior to him writing all those TV themes in the early days of television, he was orchestrating for some of the biggest movies, for Alfred Newman, for Miklos Rocha, for all of the greats. And when I would ask him about a certain score that he did, he'd be honest. And, instead of saying, well, I did it all myself, he'd say, oh, no, basically Rocha's score was so complete, the sketch, that my job was basically a copy job, So it varies. There's a lot of people in Hollywood now who can't read or write a note of music. I mean, literally. And I don't want to mention any names, but these are the people that are thought of as the great Hollywood composers of today. They can't read music at all. They basically put stuff in the computer and they hire a really great orchestra who makes their work sound divine. I have a little problem with that, in a way. But I mean, and I felt vindicated in that feeling when one of my favorite composers, Ennio Morricone, who was a real composer, um, addressed the Society of Composers and Lyricists in Los Angeles, of which I used to be a member, and flat out told them, if you're not in the trenches sweating with with the orchestration, you're not a composer. And a friend of mine who attended said a lot of the local composers in Hollywood sunk down in their chairs. But so you don't have to be able to note music to create beautiful music. That's why when I was in the supermarket and somebody saw my check was, from the musicians union, they say, "Oh, you're a musician?" I'd say, "Yes, I am." And they said, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I write music." And they said, "Oh, I write songs too." And I never took an arrogant attitude like, "Well, haha, yeah, good luck." I tell them, "Well, you might have a hit before I do, so just go for it," because you don't have to be able to notate it to be able to hear beautiful melodies in your mind, or to be able to sit at a piano or guitar and you still don't know how to write it, but you know how to play it and you know how to sing it. So I always leave that door open, that you don't have to notate music to be able to write good music. But then I feel that orchestrators, the great orchestrators, get cheated because actually they're really co-composers of the works, but they get paid a flat rate and goodbye. So
Very interesting. What an interesting life. There's a lot of complexity to it that we, the public, never get a feel for, which you're describing, which we appreciate very much.
yeah, I mean, for example, this last little bit on orchestration, to kind of give a plug to all the great orchestrators in Hollywood who never really get any credit. You look down the credits, a credit roll of a movie, and you find the orchestrator's credit far below the catering truck driver. So, I mean, shows where people, even in the industry, for the most part, don't have a clue that the reason why Star Wars had that impact was because of John Williams' scores, and it had a lot to do with Arthur Morton's, who is a composer, a real composer, who also orchestrated for Jerry Goldsmith. And I believe it was Arthur Morton, or for Star Wars, or it was not Jack Hayes, but his name was Herbert Spencer. He was Earl Hagen's partner early on when they did the Danny Thomas show, Make Room for Daddy, and everything. It said Spencer Hagen, or the Spencer Hagen Orchestra. So these guys really were composers as well, but sometimes they needed the money, or they weren't politically savvy, and so they didn't get the composing gig. But you don't need all the political savvy to necessarily get a job as an orchestrator, because all the great composers know who the great orchestrators are. They want them to make their work sound great, So there you go.
So it sounds like you're also a producer.
I mean, it was a natural evolution for me, because in my earlier days, I didn't think of myself as a composer. I was really into arranging. I really loved all the great jazz arrangers. And before I went to Hollywood and I was living in Japan the first time, I remember a friend said to me, "Why are you always arranging everybody else's music? Why don't you just write your own?" And I was like, "Bing, what? Why don't I?" And I actually wrote a jazz library while I was in Japan at that time in 79 and 80. And then I cold turkeyed and went to Hollywood, and I had all this music, and that's how I made the rounds playing this music or having this music played. And the great studio musicians are going like, "Wow, who are you? Where are you? Why aren't you like doing great things?" I said, "Well, I just got here, And those are the studio musicians that wanted to help me get really going in Hollywood. Now, my era of Hollywood, entering around 1980 and 81, synthesizers were coming in. So therefore, it was the people who were good at arranging as well. You had to wear many hats at that point. So you're not only composing, you're arranging, you're programming the computer programs, etc. And then very basically you were the producer. You were doing it from bottom up. So for me particularly, it was a natural evolution. And I know what I want. However, I'll step aside from that and say that, in a lot of ways, Joe Vanelli served for me as a kind of associate producer, because he's somebody that I needed to. I know what I want, but there are moments when the decisions are so fine that if I could find somebody I don't know if it's hard to find somebody as much as I admire and respect him to say, well, what do you think? It's my call anyway in the end, but what do you think about this? Should I go with this take or this take? And I'd listen to his opinion, and sometimes I'd go with it and sometimes I wouldn't. I'd go with another one. But so there are people like the Beatles, obviously after a while were more than capable of producing their own records, but they still had George Martin, because it's somebody kind of, somebody outside of yourself, because you can get so caught up in yourself that sometimes you start losing clarity when you're starting to really dive into the music and edit it and mix it, etc. And that's where, same thing with Billy Joel. I mean, Billy Joel can produce his own records, but he had Phil Ramone for years. And it works, but everybody now thinks that they're a producer because they have they think they're an artist and a producer and an arranger and everything because they have a computer. That's not true.
What is the role of a producer in music?
Well, to help an artist see their vision through, or their sonic vision in this case, and to do everything you can to support them, to make them feel comfortable and safe, actually, because the relationship between a producer and an artist is a very intimate one. I mean, a really good producer really gets inside the psyche and the heart of the artists, and trying to find out where that best performance is, or how to get that best performance. There are some artists, I mean, since I've produced a lot of popular artists as well, that you need to handle them very gently, and there are some artists that you almost get to the point of they need you to push them to, they almost want to have a fist fight with you, because if you get them riled up enough, they're gonna find that emotion and they're gonna get it out. So you just have to be able to do it before you get belted in the face. You know what I mean? So,
producers are kind of midwife, the way you're describing the role, is it?
That's a wonderful analogy.
I mean, energetically,
push.
Well, yeah. Or sometimes you just put your hand in and help pull the baby out.
Well, actually, that's true, because there are a lot of producers like the Mutt Lange, who produced Def Leppard, and I think he went on to marry one of the big country artists, female country artists, and he actually would go in and sing a lot of the background vocals. He would actually go out and sing the lead vocal and have the lead singer of the band emulate him. So that's a good possible analogy for sticking your hand in and pulling the baby out yourself. So there's some producers that aren't really musicians, but they have incredible musical instincts, and they know a hit record. They just know whatever that is. They can hear it. They know what it is, but they've never been schooled, and etc. So a good producer is very, very, very valuable. Of course, if they're good schmoozers too, I mean, that helps. To be able to go out and champion for the artist, and because it's getting harder and harder. There are not any independent labels anymore. Everything is all monopolized by a couple of companies. So it's the whole business changed completely. So it's almost like I tell artists coming out today, don't compare yourself to the opportunities that the artists had in the 60s. Or the 70s, because it's a completely different story. The whole playing field changed. So now being a producer writer is very valuable, because now publishers are no longer interested, for the most part, of just somebody who's a writer. They want someone who's a singer-songwriter or a producer-songwriter, because they don't really want to do the work. They want an insurance that they're going to have a better shot at getting a record, because the guy or the woman is a producer, or the guy or the woman is a singer.
It reminds me very much of the publishing houses today. They want not just a writer and an author. They want someone who can run and actually pitch their books and sell books. They want someone who's going to promote like crazy.
Yeah, they want you to do it all. In fact, on the record side, they even want the artist to put up the money for promotion.
It's a riot.
So I'm saying, when bands had a $250,000 and $500,000 budget for promotion, now I don't think that exists. Now it's just like, you guys all do it yourself, and in some ways, the new technology has been very helpful. In some ways, it's been very hurtful. So it's, you just have to find a balance. And like everything else in life, balance is important. So, but it's a completely. I mean, look, I had to do my own CDs because I wanted them done in a certain way. I was unknown in concert music at that time. Nobody was going to invest in me. In fact, even as a known commodity now, they don't even touch me. Even the Awakening CD was a huge hit. I mean, record companies couldn't get, they dream of being programmed regularly on NPR and everything. The music from those two CDs has been for the past, 14 or 15 years. I'm going, you don't have to do anything. I had my lawyer, who was a very important music attorney in Los Angeles, pitched them to record companies. Everybody turned it down. So I kind of think of what a friend of mine said, gospel singer in LA, rejection is protection. It's great. I control my own, I own everything, and I can do it the way I want. I didn't have to compromise through any kind of slimy marketing, gimmick. And but I think all of that, putting everything into it, heart, soul, financially, everything, that also plays into the beauty of the final product.
Absolutely. The other thing about what you're doing, which I really love, is that you have timeless works. When something's a hit, it's timeless. I believe a lot of the great hits are timeless. There is continuing potential for revenue producing annuity in that timeless hit and keeping it in front of people. In publishing, they'll say, well, if you had a book that came out a few years ago, it's really not worth as much anymore. Not true. Not true. The whole paradigm needs to shift about publishing of any kind. Once you have a hit, something that's timeless like that, it can continue to go. And really what you did is you self-published in the music industry. You took it from soup to nuts, all the way through, from concept through full delivery. How did you raise the money to do it, or did you save the money to do it?
No, I had no investors. I basically unloaded my bank account, and every time I worked, and I would put the money towards saving for another recording session, and did it like that. I mean, I think the Music of Life CD took me about maybe 5 or 6 years to complete in that way. But I still had my finger in Hollywood, so I was making the kind of money as a composer and as an orchestrator for one particular person that allowed me to have the money to do things the way that I wanted. Once I left Hollywood, then it became really difficult to have the money anything more than just surviving. And then when I became a humanitarian, I kind of financially became poor, but poverty is not something that is necessary for me. I did it to help other people, but I'm now on the road to getting back to myself and trying to save the money. Little by little, starting, mid-year this year to go back and start recording again. The music, I'd say 75% of a third CD is already written, and there are, I think, a few more in the ether there that I need to reel in, and then start recording again. But And I paid everybody straight up what they were supposed to be paid. I had so many friends in Hollywood, obviously, musicians, some of the best in the world, that, I did them a lot of favors by hiring them over the years. If I needed help, they would have done it for free. I said, no, that's not, I got to keep my karma clean on this. And I think you deserve it. You've worked hard. You're worth this X amount of dollars. Let me work and raise it myself, and I will pay you. And so I never ask anybody for favors. And I think that, again, with that spirit is infused in the recording. It's all good karma. It's all very positive. And I think that is part of the life that in that music and in those, I'll say, copyrights, because I own the music. And you're right. I mean, those copyrights are becoming more and more valuable. I never did any of this with an intention of making money. I just said before I die, I want to do what I want to do. In Hollywood, I've had a lot of chances to work on wonderful projects, but it's basically you're a blue collar musician and you're doing something, digging a ditch for a producer, and you can give a little bit of your opinion here and there, but basically they want it this way, they want it that way. And usually it's not for the right reasons. It's just like all geared towards, money. And there's nothing wrong with money, but I'm saying, but sometimes it's a lot of fear. You believe it or not, there's a lot of fear-based stuff in Hollywood. Let's do it the same. Or this person had a hit. Let's write 10 more songs exactly like that instead of like, well, write what you want to write. So the copyrights are becoming valuable because, again, I think the whole spirit of it was very pure and something beyond myself. Definitely beyond my intellect, because I always feel I need to keep my intellect out of the way and let that pure creative spirit come through.
Let's talk about the book that you wrote, The Spirit of Creativity. I want to know why you wrote it, and also, do you feel that it is getting out to the number of people you want it to get out to?
Well, certainly not getting out to the number of people because, as you said, I had to self-publish it. And I wanted to do it the way I wanted to do it. And by the time that I released the Spirit of Creativity and the companion book, The Wisdom of Creativity, that's around the time when I discovered what was in store for me in the world of humanitarianism. And so any funds that could have been put towards promoting the book in a bigger way fell by the wayside because every cent that I got from that point was directed towards saving lives, literally, and that gave me such a great sense of accomplishment and satisfaction that became almost an addiction to helping certain people that I had been kind of connected with in India, in particular, to saving their lives. I always had the feeling that I'd get back to it, but that's so it's and then recently I did the electronic version of the Spirit of Creativity, and then put that up on iTunes and other I think Barnes and Noble, et cetera, et cetera. So it has its way of getting around, and sometimes I'm really surprised. In 2008, I went in the middle of flying back and forth to India. I went back to get my master's degree at the University of Nebraska, and I taught there. I remember, sitting in a class, with undergraduates, and which was, it was like unbelievable to be in that position if we want to talk about having humility. And we had to go around the room and introduce ourselves, the students. And I said, Joseph Curiale. And one student, looked like, After the class, I was in the men's room, and he was in the men's room, and he goes, I bought your book and I have your CDs. The book really helped me a lot. And it's like, I can't believe you're a student in my class, so.
It's great. I noticed you write a lot about many, many things about life. There was like a meta theme all throughout the book having to do with learning as you go, being willing to get quiet, utilizing self-reflection and introspection. A very big thing that you write about is the confusion of ego and self-esteem. And I thought you could make that distinction for us here on the show.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, for example, when I taught the history of rock and roll, which is one of my real passions at the University of Nebraska, my approach to it, and it was very natural, it's not like some kind of cerebral approach to it, was that that class could be used, the examples of a lot of the people who have succeeded in rock and roll who came from nothing, as a class for self-esteem, for just self-betterment, etc. And that was my approach. And at the end of the semester, or even during the course of the semester, I get so many emails from students saying, "Wow, you made me feel so much better about myself," and etc. And so, yeah, I grew up anyway. You hear that real right brain, kind of American trash, like, if you want to succeed in anything, you got to have a good ego. You have to have a strong ego. And, I because I didn't, at the earlier age, I didn't have anything, to compare that to. But when, I started going through my own spiritual awakening, I realized that's not correct. You have to have good self-esteem to do well, not an ego. In fact, according to Eastern philosophy, you have to destroy your ego because ego will be the barrier to you really doing great things and to evolving as a human being. So, but we have to look honestly at ourselves too, and saying, well, where do we fit on the self-esteem, and have we what are the things we've done in our lives or we are doing currently to warrant strong self-esteem, that kind of thing. But I always take a very positive approach to it, and that's why it's like done covertly. But again, it's not so done intentionally, but it is covert. That I could use any class that I teach in any subject, and I can gear it. I can find a way to gear it towards helping people to find themselves and to find their strength and to not be afraid. Because, the media, kind of creates a lot of things that, these great achievements are only for these special people, as I put in the book, that are touched by the hand of God.
Very astute. I appreciate that. Say more about it.
We're all touched by the hand of God. We're all part of this holographic creation. We're all part of God. And, some people are more fortunate. That's, I'll have to just bring in some of my own philosophy. We don't know where karma and past lives might play a role in where we stand in this particular life, if people believe it. But that aside, what are we doing to create a good karma bank account? You know what I mean? Kind of, if people are afraid of the word karma, you can say, you reap what you sow. It just seems to be a law of the universe. If you want to take out religion from it completely or any dogma, it just seems to be that's the way it is. And but people say, well, other people get ahead, bad people get ahead in life. I'm going, well, this life is a very short run, by the way, and you have to be detached from the outcome. I mean, I could say the same thing, that maybe there's a lot of garbage that is being recorded and people are able to find the money to do it and they're getting support of record companies. I'm going, well, God bless them. When it's my time, I will be able to touch people in other ways. And I have been through music. I have been as a teacher, and have been sitting in the jungle, buying a pen and a pencil for a little kid that is, slopping around through the monsoon mud and has never had the proper clothes to go to school. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of ways to do good works, and we don't know. We have to be detached from the outcome. Most important thing is do the right thing. I guess that Spike Lee movie, the title, "Do the Right Thing." That's all we need to be concerned is do the right thing and let go of the end result. And I personally believe that good things will come. I mean, the past 7 years, sometimes I would, feel like I'm losing heart in moments, just going, my God, I've sacrificed everything for these people, and they're crucifying me. I mean, almost literally, I've been kidnapped twice. I mean, I've been held hostage. I've received death threats. I'm going, you want to make your head spin? What? For helping? But I'm going, I'm doing the right thing. The other stuff is on them. They'll have to deal with that. So just do the right thing.
You're going to go back and teach at the University of Minnesota in August, right?
Correct. Yeah. And hopefully complete a PhD. I'm fortunate. I mean, I've had to work hard. I don't come from a rich family or anything like that. I haven't worked hard all my life, but I think my passion has gotten me very, very, very far. And I feel anything I've ever dreamed of doing, I've end up doing it in the highest order. And I kind of feel the same with education. So after 33 years or something, I went back and got my master's, and I had a 4.0 while I was teaching and also flying back and forth to India. I'd like to see how many people could bear it. It was really difficult. And so I kind of feel in education, if PhD is considered the pinnacle, and it's not for ego purposes, is because even with a person of my experience, I could not get a job teaching and sharing all I know without a PhD in an educational institution.
You've got to be kidding.
No, I save all the rejection letters. I mean, a lot of them, they're all part of my journal, being turned down by absolutely everybody. I mean, the the stir that was created at University of Nebraska by the students saying that this was not only the best class in music, it was the best class they had in 4 years of any class in the university. And I would go to the head of the department and say, you mean to tell me that you won't hire if there's a job opening and you wouldn't hire me? And he said, no, because you don't have a PhD. Their hands are tied as well. It's become, schools is corporatization of education as well.
Absolutely.
So I think it's complete. If you want to talk about being idiotic, this is supposed to be a place of higher learning. That's about as idiotic as possible. I'm going to say, well, then you would have had to turn down Mozart, and you would have had to turn down a lot of really great people because they didn't have those kind of, as far as I know, educational credentials.
It reminds me of peer review. A lot of people think that peer review is this great thing and it keeps out all the bad stuff and it's a great filtering mechanism. What they don't know is that you don't even get to know who is reviewing you and rejecting you based on whether they agree with what you're putting forth. Not just if they like it, if they agree with it. So it reminds me of putting like a false barrier in an educational system, and it's basically arbitrary. It's just a mechanism to be more ingrained and enmeshed in the system. It has nothing to do with creativity. It has nothing to do with competency at all. It's interesting, isn't it?
Well, it's interesting, but depending on your situation, it can be very depressing as well. I mean, last year I was rejected by 7 universities to go back to school. And there's a Pulitzer Prize winning poet, and he was also a poet laureate of America. He was a very close friend. I will leave his name blank at the moment. But he told me he's been on in committees like this. He said, the people who in the departments usually are totally afraid of having somebody like you around. They're afraid you're going to take their job. But that's not I don't do that. I wouldn't do that. I think I'm the best colleague anybody could ever have, supportive. Here I am, a person, again, with my experience and my place in American music, being the assistant to somebody correcting papers. I'm going, something? There's a biblical, I believe, scripture that says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. I said, yes, you have my 100%. If I have to correct papers, that's part of my responsibility as a graduate teaching assistant. You got it. You got 200% of my, of my willingness and everything. That's the way I am. But a lot of people, again, so many people are just fear-based. And fortunately, at University of Minnesota, I was very blessed, to find the composition professor there, one who's the champion, for me. And again, I learned this anyway, Hollywood and before that. You could be the most talented, wonderful, fantastic person in the world. If you don't have a champion, you ain't getting anywhere. I mean? You have to have somebody believe. Every time I've made a leap in Hollywood or in concert music or now in academia, it always was somebody who believed in me and said, I will be willing to, stick my neck out in your behalf. And that's why I like to be a champion for other people. Of course, I'm a champion for the people that nobody wants. Nobody cares about, nobody loves, the underdog. I'm a big champion for the underdog. So it's nice once in a while when, people are champions for me as well, because that's the only way I can kind of break through, I think, get to the next level.
It's really interesting hearing you share about what you've been through. I interviewed Richard Bach, as you know, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and he was sharing and laughing, actually. Of course, years later, he can laugh, and we both laughed because of the way he told the story. But he was homeless. He was rejected everywhere for years with that one book. And then his breakthrough came. I went 7 years where I could not find work. Literally, I would consult and then apply all over to try to fit into the system. And I never fit. One day, this is when Bill Clinton got out of office, I wrote a letter to him, put my background bio, found out where his office was, sent it certified. And a few months later, after my father passed away, I got a letter from his chief of staff letting me know that he totally read the letter, how much he appreciated it, more than I know. And at this particular time, they didn't have a place for me, but they would hold what I had. The point is, they read it, they got it. I got to an ex-president of the United States. Now, you would think, okay, that if someone could find someone like that, figure out how to get them to read the letter, that person is hireable, okay? There's some skill base that is extremely important. Not at all. I was homeless when I wrote it, and I was homeless when I received the reply. 7 years of being told I didn't fit in. People said, oh, you just don't want to work hard enough. Okay, so I applied for local jobs. I applied for national jobs. I applied for state jobs. I applied for jobs in multiple fields because I have a lot of different experience. Turn down, turn down, turn down, turn down, turn down. Once I got this letter back from Bill Clinton's office, I had an epiphany, and I said, what am I worried about? Who is receiving me? What level am I worried about? Who am I trying to get in with? Seriously, why am I banging on these doors? What am I really chasing? And I stopped. I went back to my company and started to do business. And I set up the Rainmaking Company to be a whole systems approach, a manifestation agency, so that I could raise hundreds of millions of dollars for children, medical assistance, technology, feeding people, housing people, to be involved in bringing critical path solutions to the marketplace and getting them funded, and to not have one venture capitalist be able to stop me based on illegitimate criteria, like an institution needing you to have a PhD in order to be an effective, great, inspirational teacher that has critical path communication and experience to deliver to students. I got over it. I got over chasing venture capital. I got over trying to work for other people. I got over trying to fit in. I got over it. And I'll tell you, it's a very, very different life. I relate to what you're going through. Believe me, I do.
Well, it sounds like your situation was another example of rejection as protection because you ended up going in a different route. And again, it's not pleasant when you're receiving all those rejections. And if you want to talk about trying to keep your self-esteem up, which you probably know, and even my mind's pretty healthy, but still, after a while, it kind of makes you feel bonkers when, I was turned down, by everybody. I mean, last year I was in Japan within 12 hours of getting rejected from an international school because they said I'm overqualified. That's my other thing. I always get, you're overqualified. I go, wouldn't you rather have somebody who's overqualified for the money you're paying? You don't have to, you know what I mean? It's just, it's complete nonsense. But again, it's the corporatization of education. And it's like one of the biggest problems why the U.S. is just completely tanking. And it seems to be on a absolute, course for destruction because it's just part and parcel of it's endemic in the system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The criteria for everything is the dragon guarding the gate, not only of new thought, but of everything.
You have to be aligned with their agenda. So you have to be mindless. And I'm certainly not, and I can't live that way. You know what I mean? I'm a team player, and I think the best colleague anybody could ever have, but I don't help anybody by being a yes man. But that's what it seems to take these days. And but we find our way. And like I said, 7 rejections last year, those rejections led me right smack into the middle of the earthquake. And just going, well, how can this possibly be? You know what I mean? How could I be rejected by 7 universities? You know what I mean? But I know it. I know what the score is. I know the reasons. But again, you keep trying. You find that one jewel, that one person that goes, wow, this is a great opportunity for the university.
Joseph, It's Rainmaking Time was rejected by so many networks across America that you can't even believe. I had people, literally head of networks, tell me, we are not interested in a show about discovery or solutions or new knowledge or ancient knowledge. We are simply not interested. I interviewed Dr. Muhammad Yunus, the founder of the Grameen Bank, in 2003. Now get this, I was not even on the air. He literally gave me his home phone number, did an hour interview with me, and I said, I'm going to take this to NPR. NPR submitted a contract to me that was a disaster. One word I crossed out. I signed it. I crossed out one word, and that one word basically said, you cannot walk away with this. And sent it to them, sent the Muhammad Yunus interview, and I got back everything in the mail, and they said, you cannot sign the contract and cross out even one word. And the word I crossed out was same. It basically meant they could do the exact same show in-house, never talk to me again, take everything, and never have to speak to me again. And I said, no, you can't do that.
Well, good.
Absolutely not.
Where's justice in that? I mean, it's like we have like an injustice system happening.
It's incredible. Every network that I spoke with, every single network had contracts that were so parasitic, so inappropriate that a moron would have to sign them. I don't know who is signing these contracts at these networks, but they're desperate people that think that no one's ever going to listen to them. And that was not me. I told NPR, I know what I have, and you're not getting it this way. I'm not aligned with the way you do business. This contract is a disaster. And I left. But I will tell you, I interview people for fun and passion, kind of like you do your music. It's Rainmaking Time is not what I do for a living. It's what I do for total love and passion. And if I feel anybody in the world, in any profession, has a very important message, some type of unique contribution and application, I will make myself available to do an interview. And the interview is not about me, it's about them. I only come in when I'm called to come in. So I'm not really a typical radio host. I'm a communications steward, and I've been on a mission for 25 years. So who's actually here is someone who's a steward, a rainmaking steward, who's listening for the fulfillment of things. And that gets expressed through the show. But I want to tell you that I totally relate to the level of rejection. I'm so used to it. It's unbelievable. And that even includes today, if I find that somebody comes, they call the rainmaking company to do a certain kind of business, and I know and I have the guidance that I'm supposed to provide something else, that's what I will provide. I'm not just their hired gun for whatever they want. I operate as a kind of midwife for creative works, for projects, for businesses, and for receptive people who are looking for feedback of another kind, unorthodox feedback, to make sure that what they are trying to accomplish gets done. That's all I listen for, including when it comes to packaging, raising money, creating new vehicles, totally different ways of doing business, etc. It's Rainmaking Time is really the calling card that the spirit and the heart has to be in everything. If it's not there for me, if I don't care what I'm facilitating, I won't be involved in it. And neither will my company, period. That's it. And I'm clear, not only is there enough water to make sure people are not thirsty all across the world, which I'm 1,000% clear about, there's enough food, there's enough seeds, and I don't mean GMO seeds. There's enough of really everything. I interviewed a guy last week, George Swanson, who builds buildings with living, breathing materials that last thousands of years, not 20 years, thousands of years, that are healthy and vibrant buildings. So exciting. This is the kind of stuff that I am alive for today. There is not one child that should have to be worried about being clothed, fed, and sheltered and having fresh water. There's nobody. There's no reason for it. It's simply political will that's not there. There is some force that is being fed to not take care of the people around the world and the children around the world that are left adrift, left for naught, left for dead. And I think it's so incredible of you to have put your money, put 7 years, put your life on the line to go into the trenches and actually deliver on behalf of people who have no voice, have no representation, and are forgotten people. It's very important. There's so much money available. I don't care. I know that people are saying all over the world and the media is all writing how broke everybody is and how there's no money everywhere.
That's nonsense.
But it's not true. It's simply not true.
Poverty is, I mean, again, because I was in the trenches, I wasn't sitting in some office, you know what I mean? I was literally in the villages. And I see that in a way what I'm trying to do to some degree is futile. Because the systems, the governments and the general systems are actually geared to keeping people in poverty. They're not helping. Anytime you see a big government, in my opinion, just saying that they're doing something to help, you know that they're doing something to hurt them and to make it look like they're helping. They're not doing anything. And so many relief organizations are a scam. I mean, I learned that from being right there in the middle of it. And so at some point I just go, I'm not going to do any of that kind of stuff. I'm going to take whatever I can do and take some kids by the hand, and I'm going to raise them. And I'm going to put them in school. I'm going to clothe them. I'm going to be their dad. And, and that's it, as much as I can, because the system is working against them. There's a war on poverty is complete nonsense. It's a lie. Well, actually, most of what goes on in our lives is a lie. I mean, now, and that I know, what I learned in history in school, that's all a lie. I mean, this is a complete sham, but I mean, it's going to have to play itself out. I mean, it can't continue. You know what I mean? I'm not any kind of an activist or anything like that. I just keep doing the best that I can, but I try to be as educated as I can about reality, because you can get really hurt out there and very, very, very disillusioned and disappointed. But one person can make a difference in some ways to some people, and that's what I'm trying my best to do.
I'm very inspired listening to you. I was inspired reading your book. I'm so moved listening to your music. I found you many years ago, many, many years ago, and you're really a jewel into this world. I appreciate you coming on the show. You're more than welcome to come back anytime you want, wherever you are, to talk about the things that are dearest to your heart. And I just love and respect you. Thank you so much for being with us, Joseph.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Kim. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it myself. Thanks.
Next time you see the kids, will you tell them it's rainmaking time?
Okay.
Kids start laughing and smiling when I tell them that.
Yeah, I would imagine so.